So tonight we're going to start off with my story, and I'm going to try and get through it quick so we can get to the good stuff. But I thought some people don't know where I came from, and I was talking to Brian about it so he could help me jog my memory. And we were just talking about how when I was a teenager, and mom's seen all my stuff, but I've always loved being out in the desert and loved running. I remember being mad one time and running out into the desert barefoot, and I ran right through a cactus. That was one of my bad running stories, but I've always wanted to be fit. And so I had a rowing machine in my room, and I would do tons of rowing and trying to eat healthy. And this is just when I was like 14. And then as I got married, I was always trying to feed my family well. And I've always just taken it really serious, being the homemaker and feeding my family well and feeding me well. And then I had baby after baby after baby. And what I would do is I would run. I would, after a baby, that's how I would lose my weight, is through increasing my exercise. And I would get up very early while the kids and Brian were still sleeping. And I would go out and run the streets of Tooele in the dark in all seasons. And that's how I stayed thin. And I remember it 130s is about where I would get to, which is fun because that's where I'm at now. And that's when I was in my 20s. And before that in high school, I was always like 115. When I got married, when I was 18, I was 121. So now those are my goals because I'm where I was when I was like kids' ages. Anyway, that's not as important. But when my little kids were little, I had mom groups. We would meet at the park, and I remember being 133 pounds and thinking how heavy that was. And now I'm just seeing that for me, it's a healthy weight. And I didn't know that then. I just wanted to be thin. I didn't know about healthy weights and what that looks like. And I remember getting screened at one of the free health fairs, and I had the tightest grip in the county. And back then I was lifting weights and trying to be healthy. And anyway, so it's just been all these years of wanting to be healthy. And when my son was born, my 15-year-old now, he had major allergies. He was born the first 2 weeks of his life, he screamed, and I wasn't sleeping, and it was very, very difficult. And he had rashes all over his body that were bleeding and pouring liquid. And the doctors said he was allergic to proteins. And at that point, I was wondering about if I should be eating dairy. And I tried cutting dairy out, but I still wasn't able to nurse him. And he ended up having to be, we weaned him onto soy milk, which also didn't work. And then he grew up on almond milk. So he's never been able to have dairy. And then when he was about a year old, he had a staph infection. So his rashes were so bad that his ear would stick to the back of his head. And the sores, it would just be so painful to give him baths, and the backs of his knees were just massive. Like the whole back of his knee was rash, and it would just seep with fluid when he had something that he was allergic to. It was horrible. And at that time we had moved to Wyoming and were living with my sister-in-law, and they dealt with it, but he cried most of the time. And he had this staph infection, and the doctors I had taken him to said, put this cortisone cream on it. And I got the cortisone cream, and I was reading the label, and it says, don't use for more than 3 days because it can thin the skin. And I just warning bells were, this is making me emotional. Warning bells were going off. I can't put that on my baby. And he was so in much pain. And somebody had mentioned to take him to a chiropractor, and I took him, and he did some adjustment on his neck and said, "Have you thought of using oregano oil?" I had never heard of essential oils before that. And he told me put 2 drops in his almond milk, which I was making from scratch from real almonds, in the morning and 2 in the night. And I tasted it and it was awful, but it was what he needed. And often when our bodies need something, we crave it. And he would just chug that almond milk with oregano oil in it, and his staph infection went away. And his rashes behind his ears and behind his knees went away. And for the first time, he wasn't crying all the time. And you could give him a bath and it didn't hurt. And that's the first time I learned about food really being your medicine. And oregano oil, an essential oil, could do more for my baby than the doctors could. They didn't know how to help him other than take all these foods out of his diet. And he had gone to the hospital because of an egg allergy that was swelling up his head, and he just had so many allergies. So that year, I learned about the School of Natural Healing, and I took a course online, and it taught me about nutrition. It taught me about taking processed foods out and filling your body with nutrient dense foods. And this made a lot of sense to me too, because years before Josiah was born, I had taken the Master Gardener's course, and it was a 2-year course that I took in Tooele. Larry Sagers taught me how to grow food. And I had done that. I worked with my dad, and we made a huge garden in Erda. And so that was my now 18-year-old was about a year old then. And my dad lost a ton of weight that year because he was eating so much food out of the garden. And after that, I wrote a book, and his testimony is in there about eating whole foods. So then I took the School of Natural Healing course and learned even more about whole foods and how it's medicine to you. And I just saw we were able to start feeding Josiah in a way that he thrived and got off all the processed stuff. And so that's when I really started learning and applying those principles. And then I've always been a business person. I've always wanted to have a business. I just had this drive to help people. And I've tried many times. Like I said, I wrote a book in about 2012 about whole foods. I've always been a researcher, learning, and I've never known how to get the word out there about what I'm doing and really help people. I tried to help my circle, and I've got in the Garden of Eden, that was my blog that I wrote back in the early 2000s. But so then what happened is I was pondering. I did a hiking group in Bates Canyon, and I was giving prizes if you got so many miles, and Diane was part of that, and we got to talk a lot about nutrition, and she liked what I was telling her. And one day I was out on one of my long walks, and I got a message from her, and she asked me to be her coach. And look where I am now. It hit me. Yes, I'll be your coach. And then I got my personal training certificate, and I've got 3 nutrition certificates, and then I was invited to be mentored by people who knew business and who know coaching and know macros, and some of the spaces in my education have been filled. And so I've I've found fulfillment in being able to help you guys. And I feel like my whole life has brought me to this point, and I'm really grateful. I love it when you guys get on here. I love every meeting. I love seeing getting on a meeting and somebody's kind of having a hard day, and by the end you're smiling and have an idea of where to go. And I feel like my Father in heaven has given me what I needed. And there's so much I have left to learn, and I love it. And I hope to be able to continue to pour into you guys and be what you need. Be his hands is what I ask for. So there you go. I didn't mean to cry through all that. So
Thank you, Lisa.
yeah, any questions? Oh gosh.
Josiah still is careful with what he eats.
Yeah, he is. He, as a matter of fact, about 2 weeks ago, he came to me and said, "Mom, what's this on my ear?" And he thought it was a pimple or something. And I looked, and it's that rash again. He had been very, very careful. He was about 12 before he had his first egg, since he was 1 when he had such that bad reaction. And we've cleaned up his diet so much that things don't affect him as much because they're not in his diet all the time. So he's grown out of a lot of it, but the eggs and the dairy and the wheat, he's got a rash again, and his hands sometimes get rashes, and they're painful for him. So he's watching it again.
Well, I was just going to say how much I've enjoyed working with Elisa. It's been a long time since I started working with her. I had decided that I wanted to make a change in my life, and I was about a year in to that process, and I had had some coaching through my work. They give some free coaching, counseling. You can go to them for whatever you want. And I had used her as a health coach to try and meet some of my goals. And I had been hiking with Elisa a lot, and she always had good suggestions. And we always talked about healthy food and how to exercise and being healthy. And I knew she was training to be a life coach, and she wasn't done yet. And I just said, "Hey, I just decided last night that I'm going to be your first client." And so it's been really great ever since. Lots of good sessions, lots of good friendship and fellowship and fun and adventure, and lots of good knowledge from Elisa. And she keeps me on track because I'm easy to roll up and down the hill. And it's just nice having someone that you can bounce right back up off the bottom of the hill again, and just helps you get back up and encourages you, and just gives you that continuation of keep going. It seems like it's so easy to stop and start fitness or health program, and you know, you want to restart every Monday, it seems like, or the first of every month, or the first of every year. And this way it just kind of continues on, and it's been just a privilege to work with Elisa.
Thank you. I feel like I'm just there as your cheerleader because it's in you. I see each of you, your strength, and I'm just there to remind you that it's there.
Help us to reach what we want to.
Yep. Well, now that that's done, I'd like to show you a good way and a not good way to plan your food. And I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, and I'm going to turn this volume off. Okay. Oh, no. Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay, but if I do that, then it goes off of my screen. Ah, that's okay. I know what to do. I'm just gonna leave this one.